CatsCast, episode 22 for January 2024, Bloodwater by J.A. Bryson. Hello and welcome to CatsCast, your monthly feline fiction podcast. I'm your editor and host, Laura Perlman. Before we get to our story, I have a couple announcements. First off, I'd like to welcome our new assistant editor, Tarver Nova. Tarver has been an associate editor here since CatsCast began as a real podcast, and if you're not familiar with the difference between the two roles, the short version is that Tarver has a lot more responsibility now. We haven't had an assistant editor until now, and having someone in that role, and in particular having Tarver in that role, will help this operation run a lot more smoothly and efficiently. Our other announcement is that we'll be open for submissions February 1st through 11th, 2024. We're looking for cat stories with speculative elements no longer than 6,000 words. See escapeartist.net/catscast for a link to our full submission guidelines, and please read them carefully before submitting. Now on to our story. This month I'm happy to bring you Bloodwater by J.A. Bryson. This story is a CatsCast original. Our author this week is J.A. Bryson. J.A. Bryson is a graduate of the Viable Paradise Writing Workshop, with short fiction published in Insomnio, a collection of modern Gothic horror, Kaleidoscope, a Queer Anthology 2022 edition, Queer Weird West Tales, and At the Dread Machine. She's also a singer-songwriter performing folk, filk, and historical ballads. Our narrator this week is Tatiana Gray. Tatiana Gray is a critically acclaimed actress of stage, screen, and the audio booth. She has been nominated for dozens of fancy awards but hasn't won a single damn thing. She lives in a minuscule apartment in Brooklyn, New York, which she hopes to move out of one day because they don't allow cats. What a travesty. Now pour yourself a nice big glass of water and listen closely, because there's something we need to tell you.
Bloodwater by J.A. Bryson. Narrated by Tatiana Gray. The blood on Zip's hands is dried the color of rust and sticks like clay under her fingernails. Mostly, it isn't hers. Mostly, it belongs to the man she shivved, the one who mistook her for an easy mark. Zip is gray-eyed and hunger slight. She's a lot of things, fast, fierce, speechless since birth. But she isn't easy. The old-timers know this. The man waiting at the pits to grab her while she took a piss, he did not know this. He's a newcomer. His people came when jets rained fire on their homeland. They have no code. They left their children and their old-timers to burn. Their language is violence. One needn't words to speak it. Outside camp, Zip finds shade in a stand of scraggly pines with peeling bark and sun-bleached needles. She drags her palms over the parched earth. The blood remains. It doesn't flake or rub away. She thinks to spit on it, to make a paste, to paint its warning on her sunken cheeks. But her tongue is swollen with thirst. She hasn't any spit to spare. If it doesn't rain soon, her band will strike up camp. Better to move than to choke on dust. To become dust. She closes her eyes and swallows. Her heart beats too fast. The man she shivved will die. Serves him right for making her sweat. Propped against a tree, Zip drifts. She doesn't hear cat come. She wakes to his rough tongue grazing her knuckles. Groggily, she peeps an eye. The sun is not where she remembers it. Cat butts his head against her hand. Black, save for a thumbprint patch of white on his chest. He is sleek and wiry, covered nose to tail in grit. He shouldn't be this close to camp. There are too many hungry mouths these days, and not enough rats to feed them all. Zip scratches behind his ears. He purrs ecstatically, then wheels to bite her finger. She swats him on the nose. His nose is wet. Zip rifles through her satchel and pulls out her canteen. She unscrews the top, holds it to her lips, and shakes its dregs onto her tongue. It's not enough. She empties her satchel onto the ground. There are cracked and battered cell phones, foil-wrapped protein packets, folded tarps, corroded batteries, flattened bottle caps, a flashlight. Mined from trash, these are the leavings of someone else's past. They are also good trade. She could go back to the pits, pay the stillman, fill her cup. Or Cat sits, legs splayed, licking his genitals. He's not thirsty. Zip teeters as she stands. She blinks the sand from her vision. Somewhere, Cat has water. If she follows, he will take her to it. She squints at the sun. It's already past noon. Surely the man has bled out by now, his essence leaching into their stills. His death will not be wasted. That's not her people's way. They will drink him, but not Zip, not if she can help it. Fingers stiff, she gathers her belongings. Cat weaves between her ankles, chirruping excitedly. He catches her bootlaces in his perfect white teeth. Something titters in the distance, and he darts. Zip follows after. She isn't fast today. The sun beats too hot as she wades through knee-high grasses, dried to a crisp razor brown. Rocks slide beneath her boots. She trains her eyes on his antenna tail, watching as it fades in and out of view. She doesn't sweat. Her pulse beats in her ears. Cat circles back. He likes this game. He chitters and leaps, showing off. He chases ghosts and crickets and his own tail. She laughs. The sound of her voice startles him. They go farther from camp than Zip's ventured since her band's arrival. Cat checks for her over his shoulder, his yellow gaze dubious. He knows she wants something, a fact that makes him cautious. He deliberates, blinks pensively. For every rodent's skull he's nibbled from her palm, for every scrap of wing and tail she's proffered, he owes her this. She licks cracked lips. Perhaps something in him understands, or perhaps he's grown weary of their sport. Regardless, he leads her to a concrete shed, the likes of which Zip recognizes from her childhood. It's a maintenance adit, an access point for the pedestrian tunnels. There shouldn't be one here. The city has long been demolished, its roots ground to dust. The steel door on the adit hangs askew. Cat slips inside the narrow crack, then peeks out his head coquettishly, as if daring her to follow. Zip is slight, but not as slight as Cat. There's no way she'll fit. She tugs the door handle, heels dug in, grunting. It doesn't budge. She wedges her shoulder between the door and frame, pushing with all of her might. Still nothing. Meanwhile, Cat skitters, chasing darkness, or rats. Spent, Zip leans her forehead against the cool, rough brick. She closes her eyes and sees the dead man, her shiv quivering in the meat of his thigh. Had he been reaching for her or her pack? Her body, or her belongings? Either way, he'd caught her by surprise, pants down, as it were. Either way, he'd called her a cunt as she'd twisted in the shiv. Zip forces the image from her mind. She has more pressing concerns. This far from camp, broiling in the midday sun, woozy and stupid with thirst. Cat slinks from behind the shed. He plops down at her feet, squinting up. There's another way inside, the little bastard. Zip circles the perimeter, crunching gravel, kicking up clouds of silt. It doesn't take long to find the chasm, a fissure just wider than the adit's mouth, A piece of slab juts like a broken tooth with sunken earth all around it. Zip takes out her light, catches it between her teeth, and lowers herself inside. Cat follows. Zip has no memory of a childhood above ground, or of whomever birthed and reared her. Was she born in the tunnels or surrendered to them, a child of the darkness or its ward? Fluorescent lights, the whoosh of air filters, these are the building blocks of her memories. Footsteps echoing off dank walls, piss and perfume, relentless hunger. Sometimes she was alone, a beggar child, a thief. Sometimes she roved with bands of scavengers, picking through the rubble of the ruined cities and sectors. As a girl, she fell in with the old-timers, the ones who called themselves Bones. They taught her to catch and skin rats. Zip shimmies on her back. The passage is cramped and dark. Grit itches her nostrils, catching in her lashes. She drops into an arching tunnelway, sucks a breath, and shines her light from wall to wall. The tilework is vibrant still. The murals of hands held in togetherness, faces smiling beneath symbols she can neither decipher nor speak. No one smiles like that now, not with earth in its death throes. Paw prints disturb the dust-covered floor. Cat's handiwork. He paces as she shines her light at the cracked ceiling, sliding its beam over to the dark artery they've just traversed. It could collapse. The ceiling could crumble. She'd be trapped, buried alive. Zip closes her eyes, breathing the tunnel's stale air. In the distance, she hears a single, hollow drip. At least she won't die of thirst. She presses her mind to the silence and hears it again. Goose flesh rises along her arms. Cat's ears twitch like he's listening too. And then, in a flash, he bolts. Zip takes off after him, their little game, the beam of her light flickering as she sprints. Her legs are heavy as she tears through the darkness, her footsteps pounding in her ears. He stops. Ahead, a pair of gleaming eyes catch the light's beam. One, and then another. She holds her breath as they approach not her, but Cat. The two are his miniatures, more white than black, with ears too big for their heads and tails too long for their bodies. Mewling, they leap and tussle, vying for Cat's attention. Claws flash, tiny teeth gleam. They are impish, they are hungry. They are, undoubtedly, cats. She reaches for one. It puffs and hisses, back arched, scuttling sideways across the concrete. From the shadows, a low growl emanates. Zip sweeps her light. Black and white. The mother cat slinks forward, yellow eyes aglow. The kittens crouch, ears flat, submissive. Instinctively, Zip takes a step back. Cat brushes against her calf. He lets go a tiny cry. If Cat were a man, she wouldn't suffer his begging. Her people aren't the generous sort. But Cat isn't a man. He is Cat. He trusts her. He's brought her to meet his kin. Zip swallows. He will bring her to water, but first she must pay his price. Flashlight tucked under her chin, Zip reaches inside her pack. She pulls out a foil-wrapped protein packet and squeezes it in her fist, crumbling its contents. Cat's ears perk at the sound. With her teeth, Zip rips open the foil package. She sprinkles its contents in her hand and then reaches, making an offering. Cat indulges eagerly. Zip's stomach growls. Cat's miniatures scent the air. They are more hungry than timid. Soon, 3 wet, whiskered muzzles tickle her outstretched palm as the mother cat watches, keeping at a safe distance. Zip understands her caution. They are kindred spirits in that way. Once her palm has been licked clean, Zip flings the packaging in the mother cat's direction, scattering its remaining crumbs over the ground. Only then does the matriarch eat. Another drip, this one nearer than the first. Zip's light flickers, Vertigo unsteadies her. Stooping, she leans a hand against the tunnel wall. The stone is cool and damp. Cat grooms indifferently. Dark spots drift across Zip's field of vision. She will find water without Cat. It must be close. Following a new passageway, she wends deeper into the labyrinth. All the while, she listens for drips, for rats, for Cat's antics. She hears nothing but the pounding of her own heartbeat, her dragging footsteps, her increasingly ragged breaths. Again, her light flickers. This time, it goes out. Zip blinks. There are no shapes amidst the blackness, no shadows to discern. She shakes her light, willing it to turn back on. Uselessly, she hammers its butt against her palm. She'd been a fool to follow Cat. She should have returned to the pits, paid the stillman, drank her fill of blood water. Instead, she'll be lost to the darkness. The newcomers will think she ran scared. The old-timers will tisk and shake their heads. Zip could surrender. To the darkness, to her thirst. She could lay down on the tunnel floor. She could close her eyes. Maybe Cat would come. Maybe he would rest his soft head against her chest. He would purr, and she would drift. And then he would eat her. Sweet Cat. Zip gives her flashlight a last desperate shake. Miraculously, it flickers back to life. She laughs her relief. The sound echoes off the walls. Now, of course, Cat comes. He must investigate. He emerges from a side tunnel, tail lifted high in the air. He sniffs her bootlaces, snagging one in his teeth. Zip crouches to pet his head. As she does, her light exposes a dark, splotchy pattern covering the ground. They're paw prints, only muddy. Wet. Her breath catches. Cat's left a trail. Righting herself, Zip begins to retrace his steps. Cat follows, nipping playfully at her shins until they're back within the sight of the entry point. Abruptly, the paw prints end. Zip drags her light along the wall, along its mural of smiling faces. A crack overspreads the painted tiles, forming a dark, wet rivulet that trickles into a deep, burbling puddle. She licks her lips and rummages for her canteen. Her hands shake. She can hardly unscrew the cap. She tucks the flashlight underneath her chin. Its beam illuminates the dead man's blood still caked beneath her fingernails. Before she drinks, she squats to wet her fingers in the pool. The water is shockingly, bitingly cold. Holding her breath, she plunges both hands to the wrists, rubbing them together for as long as she can stand the burning. The blood dissipates. Her skin turns pink and wrinkly. She shivers. Zip takes her canteen and holds it to the trickling fissure. When it's full, she drinks. Oh, she drinks. The water is crisp and clean. It isn't blood water. It doesn't even stink of piss. She meters her sips. She can't afford to vomit it back up. Cat brushes against her hip, purring contentedly. Then Zip's light goes out for good. This time, she's near enough the chasm's mouth for trace daylight to filter from above. Her eyes adjust to the dimness. Feeling along the tiles, she fills her canteen one last time. At camp, gossip spreads like dysentery. Like dysentery, it's mostly shit. Zip imagines the old-timers rehashing her bloody tale, embellished, of course, over dominoes, picking at their remaining teeth with pigeon bones. The newcomers, meanwhile, will curse the nameless silent girl, the cunt who felled one of their own. Let it serve as a reminder. Zip is not easy. The day's saved trade will make for a fine new shiv. As she screws the cat back onto her canteen, Cat dashes for the surface. Her fickle friend, her intrepid escort. In the distance, his mate growls lowly. Zip understands. She will not overstay her welcome. Thirst slaked, she tucks her canteen and shoulders her pack. She will try not to give Cat cause to eat her. Sweet Cat.
And we're back. That was Bloodwater by J.A. Bryson. J.A. says, Bloodwater is set in the brutal resource-driven dystopia of my science fiction novel, Zero Sector, which I hope to begin revising in 2024. When I asked her about her cats, she said, I have 3 cats, Mishi, Sushi, and Steve, plus my neighbor's cat who thinks he's mine, Midnight. The latter is the inspiration for Cat in Bloodwater. I'm also reptile mom to a crested gecko, Frankie, and leopard gecko, Inky, and a rescue ball python, Toast. She also sent along a collage of pictures of all of them, which you can see in our show notes. A million years or so ago, when I was in my early teens, I had a cat named Pooch. I'm ashamed to say I named him. Pooch was an indoor-outdoor cat, and one morning I woke up to the sound of him meowing uncharacteristically insistently. He led me 2 or 3 blocks away to a paper bag containing an abandoned kitten. The way he led me there was nothing like the method this story's cat used. He basically just walked ahead of me and kept looking back to make sure I was following. But still, this cat reminded me of him. Happy New Year, everyone, and whatever your 2023 was like, I hope 2024 is better. Today's cover art is based on the painting Lost Chance by Charles Burton Barber, 1845 to 1894, which I found on the amazing Cats of Yore Blue Sky feed. Come chat with us. If you're a Patreon patron, you can join the Escape Artists Discord server automatically through Patreon. Or you can find us on Blue Sky as at catscast.org or on the social media service formerly known as Twitter as at CatsCastPod. We'll have a patron-only episode next month, but we'll be back on the public feed the month after that. In the meantime, you can find more narrative goodness on our weekly sister podcasts, Escape Pod for science fiction, Podcastle for fantasy, Pseudopod for horror, and Cast of Wonders for YA. Today's episode is brought to you by audio producers Wilson Fowley and Dave Robison, assistant editor Tarver Nova, and me, editor Laura Perlman. Our opening and closing music is Easy Lemon by Kevin MacLeod. CatsCast is a production of the Escape Artists Foundation, a U.S. 501c3 nonprofit. This episode is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License, which means you can't change it or sell it, but you can share it as much as you like. CatsCast relies on listener donations, so thank you so much if you've already donated. You can support us and all the other EA podcasts by donating via patreon.com/EA podcasts or through the website escapeartist.net. You can also help us out by leaving a review or rating at Apple Podcasts or wherever you normally leave those things. CatsCast is distributed monthly on the Escape Artists Premium content feed. A separate public CatsCast feed gets a subset of those episodes. More details can be found in the show notes or at escapeartist.net/catscast. Thanks for listening, and until next time, we wish you all the purrs.